get right into our agenda today. We have a couple of big things that I need to report out on in terms of progress of the work groups, and obviously some other agenda items. We're going to try to make our way all the way through those. The staff reports to me that we have a quorum. We currently have 13 or 14? 14. We currently have 14 present. So just as a quick reminder, right now, this council sits at quorum is 11, and so is majority. So just as a reminder that that's how that process works. We'll talk a little bit about the rules work group in a minute, about what progress we've made and what direction that'll be going in. But because the rules work group doesn't have a report in front of the council yet, we'll use the same standard rules we have been using. So on basic procedural votes, things like approving the minutes, we'll call for a voice vote or a show of hands. On any items that are formal voting items down below, we'll call the roll to make sure that we are accurately recording everybody's vote. And what we'll do is any item that does require a vote, we will ask the council for a motion. We'll ask the council for a second, and then we'll do discussion. That way we can be consistent with what we've been doing. Okay? Is everybody clear on that? We'll review that when we get to those items. I just want to make sure we're consistent with that. All right, so with that said, meeting minutes for the January 30th, 2019 meeting were distributed to the council. Are there any modifications or changes or notes or concerns about the meeting minutes? All right, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last meeting. Valerie, and a second. Great, Beth, thank you. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes from the last meeting, please signify by putting your hand up. Great, I see just about everybody. Are there any folks opposed to approving it? No, any abstentions? Sean Cullinane, you're just abstaining because you weren't here. Okay, great. So, believe by 13-0 to 1, the meeting minutes passed. That's great. I always like to start the meeting off on a high note. We appreciate that. So I owe you several updates under old business, so I'm going to do that first. Let's talk about the rules work group first. We didn't get a lot of volunteers for the rules work group, so I may end up calling some of you and asking you to participate. We would appreciate that. We have started talking about June 4th as an opportunity, or we have a number of dates that week available. So if you're interested in the rules group, would you please see Sue Filburn over at the staff table before the end of the at the end of the meeting. Don't run over now. Please let her know that you are interested. You continue to be interested if you've already volunteered, and let us know which dates in June, if you happen to know you're available. That would be great. The biggest question for volunteers is whether you feel like we need to meet in person, or whether you feel like a conference call, WebEx, or other opportunity would work. I think for the first meeting, we can probably have a level-setting conversation where we're reviewing documents. We have to think about what everybody's comfort level is with that. But we don't want to limit it to just people who are in the Albany area. So if you can think about that when you volunteer, that would be great. If not, I am going to call for folks, because we're trying to have about 5 or so. More welcome, but we think 5 is probably a good way to representatively represent the council and the different interests on the council. Okay. There are a variety of things that work group will have to work through. We're going to work with basic operating rules for the council first, making sure that we know, are we putting, limits on speaking, what the order of the speaking is, all of those sorts of things. There's also some responsibilities in State Finance Law 161 that don't have procedures around them, so we may also move into that. So if anybody is looking at sort of what the topics are going to be for that work group, those are going to be the topics. Okay. Procurement guidelines work group, I think, is probably the larger update. So we have gone back to the work group with a schedule. We want to share that schedule with you guys today, and we can send it out after, but we wanted to make sure we discussed it. You guys have been actively patient with us while we're working on the guidelines. So the reason the guidelines are taking so long is we went through, I know all of you are intimately familiar with the procurement guidelines. When you get to sections 4 and 5, you start talking about specifics about an IFB or an RFP. And what we discovered was, in most cases, the information in both sections was applicable to all kinds of solicitations. So it really became a discussion of not types of solicitation, but the steps in a solicitation. So we looked at the sections, and the work group as a whole has agreed to actually reset them to what you do before your solicitation. So how you do your research, how you build your solicitation, how you choose the right procurement methodology. Then the development of the solicitation, all the way from mandatory terms and conditions, all the way to how do you write scope, how do you design your pricing pages, those sorts of things. The third section in that order would be during the procurement, which is going to talk about everything from advertisement to answering questions to managing the restricted period and managing issues surrounding the lobbying law. The fourth section will be from the moment the bids are received through award, which will really talk about how you evaluate them, how you do a pricing mechanism correctly, how when you make decisions you document all of that in your procurement record. And then the last section will be about any other approvals that are required, and also contract maintenance, contract management. So we wanted to bring that forward to you guys. I know you have waited patiently to see a new document. In that order, the work group has been presented a draft of all the way through advertisement. That next section of during the solicitation, they should have a draft in the next week or two. And then our expectation is that by May 20th, the guidelines work group will have all of the sections, with the exception of the glossaries, because we think the document is going to drive the glossary in large part. So we are going to be working on that while we present the work group with everything else. And when I say present, I mean the work group has worked very hard. They have dozens of hours into it just in-person meetings, and also everybody is working very hard behind the scenes. OGS staff is cataloging all of that, proposing sort of hybrid solutions where different suggestions were made, and getting all of that back to the work group. So that'll happen on or about May 20th, and we're hoping that there's a week or 2 weeks in there where the work group gets together, gives their feedback, and provides that. All of that feedback will be put together, and then a completed document we're expecting to deliver to you the week of June 28th as the members of the council. What we are hoping is that you will spend that week, all of July and part of August, to get your feedback back to us, to address any questions members of the council have about those things. We may have a work group meeting in there if members of the council want to come and want to discuss the strategy there. The hope is to get all of that done, to get a final in your hands at some point, closing in on the end of August. We have a soft date of August 26th for that, but we'd like you to have that in hand by then. And then our hope is that the council members will take that last opportunity to go through it, and that a big chunk of what we do on the September 5th Procurement Council meeting will be to move that forward. So we are hoping that if there is a lot of if there are considerable disagreements, let's have them at the table on September 5th. But beforehand, anything we can resolve, anything we can get right, the document will be, it will be 40 million pages long. That was a joke to make it feel less bad when I said it'll be about 70 pages long. So it will, there's considerable work to be done on going through it and making sure that it matches your understanding of the procurement process. There are a couple of issues where we will be coming back to the council and asking you to make guidelines that specifically address issues around where our current practice seems to be the accepted practice, but there's some conflicting language in the statute. So we will be asking the procurement council to make guidelines that hopefully reflect the practical application of these, and then we may be coming back to you to talk about resolution of those issues and any of those conflicts. Does that make sense to everybody? Some of them are fairly detailed, so we do plan to brief them. We plan to take the time to walk everybody on the council through them. But there are some places where the ideal for the procurement guidelines is that they follow the statute, as closely as possible. There are some places where the widely accepted practice, even among the control agencies, is a little bit different than that, because the vocabulary in the statute is older than some of the practices are. So they just naturally diverged, and so there's some places to correct that. There's also some places where the current guidelines made policies, and those are policies that are really in the purview of the control agencies. So what we talked about doing, and what all of our draft documents do, is focus on the procurement guidelines giving guidance but not making additional rules. And if additional rules come from the control agencies, then that would be something that would be added on top of that. We would reference to them, but the goal is to not have the procurement guidelines create laws, statutes, policies, rules that don't already exist. Okay? So that is the progress. If council members want to see the draft documents as they are right now, you are welcome to. They literally are, every line of them is redlined, because we've been moving paragraphs around and changing stuff. And I don't get a lot of chance to do this, but all of the members of the work group have been awesome. We appreciate you providing either yourselves or your staff to those. And just so I can do it in a public forum, there are a number of OGS staff members behind the scenes that are putting, probably 100 hours or 200 hours into getting these documents ready. And I just want to acknowledge them. There's a number of them from council's office that are here and not here, and a number of my staff. I don't think Angela is here, or Angela Buck has been sitting in a room doing nothing but cataloging every word that comes out of our mouth for the last 4 months. So I just want to make sure she knows we appreciate it. She's probably up in her office watching this, so it's a shameless plug for my team. So before we go further, I know we don't usually under old business, but does anybody have questions about the approach? Does anybody have questions about how the procurement guidelines work group is operating? Does anybody need any more information on that right now? Does anybody have a concern about our model, where we're going to have another review by the work group and then get content out to everybody and hopefully have everybody ready by September 5th to vote on it? Okay. I like to ask 11 questions in a row so nobody can respond to them. Okay. So that's great. There are other things that the council will need to take up after the procurement guidelines. So so the Procurement Council has issued a number of bulletins. We addressed one of those. We addressed the debrief. Thank you. We addressed the debriefing one at the last meeting. Several of the others will be affected by the work of the procurement guidelines work group and by the changes to the guidelines, hopefully. So you should expect that we will be out talking about those. Some of those may just be drafts that we provide to you. They're only a couple of pages long. Some of them, like the preferred source guidelines that will also need to be updated, are much larger documents, and we will be doing a full work group for that. So, if the staff that you have on the procurement guidelines work group are fatigued, we hope that you might have other people that are relevant for that. And I think, it might be a little bit of a different group of stakeholders also for that. So, so with that said, I don't believe I have any other new business.
I have one This is just a reminder that the email came out from the Joint Commission on Public Ethics yesterday that everyone has to fill out their financial disclosure statement. In particular, the non-state agency representatives, when you do fill out your financial disclosure statement, if you could just send an email to me letting me know that you've done that, so we don't have to follow up with you. You would have gotten an email both from Jacob and then one from my office today reminding you of that obligation.
Great. Okay, so Mark, would you do legislative updates?
Sure. As part of the budget, the Article 17B of the Executive Law, the Service Disabled Veterans an Act, was extended for 5 years through March 31 of 2024. That is so far what we have legislatively.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Standing reporting. We have reports on the application for preferred source designation approved under OGS standing authority. John?
As of April 16, 2019, OGS has not approved any items under its standing authority since the last report given on January 30, 2019.
Awesome. Thank you. The next standing reporting item is the mandatory report provided by NYSED on mail fulfillment that was provided to the council with the agenda.
It was sent out on April the 1st to the members.
Great. So that was provided. So what our protocol has been is that report is being provided to OGSS staff to the council and then provided out to the council. I know NYSED has provided someone in the room if there are any questions, but I think that's up to you guys. Does anybody have any questions about the report that was filed? Seeing none. Is there anything to add to the report, Maureen? Okay. So next, as we have done in a series of meetings, we're trying to also make sure that things that are new about procurement or our opportunities about procurement are presented to the Procurement Council. Again, we did get one request from council members to focus on another item. That council member is not present, so we had the request was to talk about New York grown food and the USDA program for a lot of school districts and a lot of other programs. Because that council member is not present, we have postponed that to another meeting. We are taking requests, though, from council members about subjects you would like to see during this section and things that you would find informative, educational, whether, the reason this council is constituted of varying perspectives is not just so that OGS can present contract suites at each of these meetings. With that said, what we've decided to do is take the opportunity to have Cheska Lynn from the OGS staff walk you through the new Procurement Services and Procurement Council websites, which we're all very proud of, but we're looking forward to that walkthrough. Cheska?
Thank you, Sean. Good morning. My name is Cheska Lynn, and I'm a Public Information Specialist of Digital Content for Procurement Services. And as many of you know, OGS transitioned a website on March 12th to the new Drupal 8 platform that the entire state is moving toward. So whereas you used to be able to find procurement services on nicepro.ny.gov, .ogs.ny.gov, we have now transitioned that entire site into the new OGS website. So you can find procurement services pages as well as state procurement council pages by going straight to ogs.ny.gov, and the homepage for procurement is the /procurement. Some of the things I'll go over are the web changes new this year, how to navigate some of the more commonly used web pages, of course the New York State Procurement Council pages, and then searching for contract awards. So what's changed? The entire OGS agency has moved to a new platform. So many of you have probably noticed that your bookmarks are broken. Those bookmarks honestly should be, and I know it's a pain, but they should be deleted and search for the new page, replaced with that page. If you have trouble finding anything, please contact me directly, and I will be happy to help provide those new links to you. Not redirecting these pages and having everyone change their bookmarks helps us dramatically with our Google Analytics so that we can see what is popular and some of the pages that maybe we need to do a better job of highlighting. So as I mentioned, nicepro.ogs.ny.gov was shut down, and it is archived, so I do have a copy of all of those old pages. Existing web addresses have changed. The New York State Procurement Council resources have moved, and the upcoming meeting information located under Open Meetings and New York State Procurement Council pages, all of that is still there. It just looks a little bit different. So these are some of the things that I'll touch on, mostly briefly through screenshots so that you can see what the new pages look like. So this is Procurement's new homepage. On the homepage, you can find most of the things that you'll also find in the drop-down. So contract awards, e-marketplace, vehicle marketplace, upcoming events, and many popular resources, the bid calendar, bid opening results, the 1122 program, emergency resources. All of these are linked from the homepage. Procurement also has a drop-down menu now. This is everything on the drop-down menu, and make a note, please, that you can still click on Procurement, and that takes you straight to the heading page where all of these things are also linked. Something new for announcements, and this includes the circular letters, any letters for filed requirements, as well as general announcements. These can now be searched by keyword, by a date range. You can limit by year. And this is also located in that drop-down menu. Doing business, Bidding 101, the bid calendar, links out to the SDVOB, MWBE, the Division of Small Business, the vendor file system, as well as users can find the Appendix B and usage notes on this page. And then buyer information, upcoming events and training geared towards buyers. Buying 101 resources that is broken down by the type of buyer. So we have state agencies, municipalities, school districts, and SUNY. Training materials, as well as popular resources on this page for buyers. Something else that's new is how we're displaying outreach events. So the outreach events will be in the full calendar for all OGS events, and procurement can be searched. The next upcoming event is GovBuy, which is April 30th and May 1st, and all of the information can be found here on this page also for GovBuy. The new preferred sources page, so all of this is centralized to one landing page for preferred sources, and there are links out as well as the guidelines, the list of preferred source offerings, forms, status reports, training materials, and all of the preferred source announcements are located here as well as on the general announcements page. We also have brand new pages for green purchasing, which includes the product search table. This table is fully searchable by product name and links out to the contracts. Now for the Procurement Council. The Procurement Council page before was quite simple, mostly just lists of links of documents, and we've arranged this a little differently now. You can also find the meetings still in the footer under Open Meetings. That will always have the list of documents for the upcoming meeting. What's different here is this page is the same page housed in two locations. So all of the documents listed for upcoming meetings also automatically becomes the archive once that meeting has concluded. And here we have the upcoming meetings, including the one today, and the page that shows you the document display, as well as the live webcast link. After today, that link will become an actual embedded video within the page, as you can see on this screen, the meeting webcast. And then other bulletins and documents are also found on the landing page for the Procurement Council. Then on to contracts and the searchable award table. This is something different from our previous iteration of the site. So you can visit the drop-down to contracts, and then the search button is right under the header, and it brings you to this table. This is a searchable award table, so you can search by group number, award number, any of the keywords in the award description. And then from there, link out to the actual award page. And of course, if you have any trouble at all, aside from contacting me directly, please contact our customer services, and they can help you find what you're looking for on the new site. Are there any questions? Yes.
I think it was slide 12. Oh, sorry. I think it was slide 12, if I recall correctly. But would it make sense to list the contract reporter as a link? Or maybe 11 then. Yes, you have links to...
On Do Business. It may be there, but if it isn't, I'll double check, and I can certainly link to it.
Third one, third from the top.
Oh, I was looking at links to. I didn't see it was above. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And, as always, particularly as members of the Procurement Council, we encourage you to look at the new pages specifically for this council. A couple of housekeeping issues. They continue to use the same picture of me for every video and every picture. So those of you that would like to be featured on our website, please let Cheska know so that I am not the only photo on there.
My face is on the front page, so.
Right to my left with John's predecessor, Christine, right next to me. I'm just saying, if folks would like to pretty that up, because I'm not doing a great job of it, we'll take volunteers. I blew right past new business, and I had forgotten that we have a new council member seated, and I was supposed to introduce him. So, sorry, John. So John Evers, am I pronouncing that right? Right. Okay. So John Evers is here. He's a legislative appointee, and he is currently representing the Business Council of New York State. He has had a supportive and active role in state government for nearly 30 years, variety of roles with the Assembly, the Department of Taxation and Finance, and with Albany County government. So I know he doesn't like me to embarrass him a lot, but we didn't want to miss an opportunity to embarrass him a little. So welcome to the council, and thank you, John, for your commitment to participate.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda is the discretionary purchases bulletin. So it was on our agenda in the hopes of doing what we did last time, which was to start modernizing and getting all of our documents in order in anticipation of the new guidelines. When we went through the discretionary bulletin, the same item continues to come up as an item that is in statute, but is also challenging operationally. So one of the main issues we're working on is the order of priority. The order of priority appears in multiple sections of the statute, and in several of the sections it has conflicting language. It also conflicts with our operations right now. There's a section that talks about, and we're going to brief all of you on this when we get to the guidelines. There is a section that talks about existing agency or multi-agency contracts. Everybody understands the value in seeing if another agency had done the procurement already and if you could leverage that procurement for efficiency or for volume discounts. The challenge is to say that it is a mandatory stop where you must review every contract that every agency or every cooperative or every other entity has before moving on to doing your own solicitation is both not what we do in practice, and it's really it's very, I don't want to say impossible, but it's highly impractical from an operational standpoint. Those items are also reflected in the discretionary purchasing bulletin, excuse me. So because they are also reflected there, we're going to wait for the procurement guidelines to be approved that addresses those issues, hopefully, and then the discretionary spend the discretionary spend bulletin will be addressed there also. So that's why it was on your agenda. Our intention was to resolve those issues and to bring those to you. There are a variety of discretionary spend things that we want to make sure are talked about properly. Things like different discretionary spend limitations for MWBEs. Things like the mechanics of going through those processes. We would like to have put that in front of you today, but we think the council needs to have a full discussion on some of those issues of where the statute and the operations conflict before we present that. So we left it on the agenda so you didn't think it was a sleight of hand from us, but we did want to make sure that you understood what our reasoning was for not presenting it to you today. We're happy to share the current version. We have been working on some draft versions. If anybody wants to talk to us about the sections that are in question and the issues that are in question, we're happy to do that. And we're happy to fill you in on the discussions the work group has been having. So we apologize for that if there was any confusion, but we wanted you to know why we didn't bring that forward to you to be reviewed today. Does anybody want to take a minute and ask any questions about that? No. Okay. Seeing none. So there is a voting item that has been put in front of you for consideration. It's identified as New York State Procurement Council Resolution 2019-01. So Beth, are you in a position to present it, or would you like us to?
I can jump in if I'm not doing well, but I think I get it.
Sure.
I mean, I get it. I don't know if I speak legalese, but,
Yeah, you have to talk into the
yeah,
microphone.
okay. I don't know if I do the legal talk correctly, but, yeah. So there's a resolution being put forth to address a conflict that currently exists in the guidelines where OGS has to review a preferred source application with 45 days and ESD has 120 days. And we would like to make that 90 days where OGS and ESD review the applications concurrently. And so that's so that we avoid the conflict that's currently in the guidelines, and also so that we can meet all of the applications that need to come up. We can hit all of the quarterly procurement council meetings.
Yeah. Can I add a couple things? Sure. Yeah. Just a couple of additional items. So this only applies to applications that come before the Procurement Council for new service offerings or new commodities. This doesn't relate to the applications, the price approval applications, or the ongoing contract approval that's going on by previously approved service or commodity offerings. And we're doing this as a resolution amending the resolution from 2004 because that resolution from 2004 talked about the 45 days for OGS. And that's why we're doing it in a resolution format rather than actually changing the guidelines themselves at this time, because as Sean mentioned, there will be a full work group to talk about the preferred source guidelines and updates after the procurement guidelines are completed. So that's why we're doing it in this resolution format. And ESD has graciously agreed to reduce their review time by 30 days down to 90 days. And again, the consistency is what's really important. So OGS isn't saying to ESD, come on, hurry up, get this moving. We just thought it would be important to be consistent.
Okay. Okay, so this is a resolution that is in front of the council or has been proposed. It would need a motion. Is anybody willing to motion to consider this resolution? Paul? Is anybody willing to second it? Sean? Thank you. So that moves us into discussion on this. So we'll take, if we find that there is a lot of discussion on both sides, we'll try to take discussion in favor or discussion against, going back and forth. That's going to be our model going forward. That's going to be the effort we put forward. Just can I get a sense of, are there folks who would like to participate in this discussion? So Ron, you want to participate? Anybody else? Okay, so rather than going back and forth, Ron will go right to you.
Now I figure out how to work the mic. I'm not sure if this belongs in this resolution, but I wondered if it made sense to have something in about having a recommendation completed and submitted to the council 7 days prior to our meeting, just to give us some time to read and digest.
So I think we could certainly have that discussion. If it was going to make this resolution, we would look to amend that resolution. I think the question is, in those, which one would take priority, right? So if the 90 days for approval put it inside of the 7 days, would we still want to consider that for the council meeting? And I think, from my perspective, if something has been reviewed, if it's an opportunity for business to be done under that definition or under that new item, I'd like to do that. So if we're going to add it, I would almost suggest maybe it could be a recommendation and a recommendation that OGS publishes it to a recommended calendar if we add it here. If we don't add it here, I think the other opportunity to add it is on the procurement, on the preferred source guidelines work group. And I want to share, so I was originally adamant about not opening the preferred source guidelines and doing all of this together. The reason why I am supportive of this being here now, even as amended, as you might be proposing, Ron, the reason I'm hugely supportive of this now is there is not an application pending with us. So the next Procurement Council meeting is more than 90 days away. And because it is more than 90 days away, that means there is no application that could be negatively impacted by doing it now. So I don't know if you want to propose an amendment, we can certainly talk about it. I don't know which it goes in. I agree with you that we want to make sure the documents are to the council as soon as possible. So it either would need to be proposed as an amendment here, or it would be our first takeaway item to deal with when we open the preferred source guidelines. But I just wanted everybody to know that's why, I was originally adamant that if it was in the preferred source guidelines, it would go to the work group. But because there is no application that can be negatively impacted and we can resolve this issue and everybody can have advance notice, that's why we decided to pull this out. So it is in no way intended to diminish the role of the preferred source guidelines work group that'll be constituted coming up. So with that said, does anybody else have any comments? Or Ron, do you want to propose that as an amendment now?
I guess I would propose it as an amendment, just that that recommendation get out to council 7 days prior. It just would allow us to be, I think, better prepared for discussion, meaningful discussion here.
And then, so there's a section now, therefore, in the document. It says, now therefore be it resolved that the Procurement Council amends section 10, adding a commodity or service to the list of preferred source offerings. Subdivision C, impact assessment on New York State vendor suppliers, to change the time period for submittal to ESD from 120 days to 90 days. And subdivision F, application lead times of the preferred source guidelines, to change the time period for submittal to OGS from 45 days to 90 days. So do you want to amend at the end that, that the recommend, what, do you have proposed language you want to use there?
I did not write proposed language.
Okay. So how about I open this up to discussion a little bit? We'll see if there is language. And I think obviously the question we have is, this is a hard deadline, right? This is an expected deadline. Documents will be submitted by this, reviews will be done by these dates. I think the question I would have is, if we amend it, what happens if, right, again, right, what happens if the 90 days takes us to 5 days before the meeting and we don't get that in here? So, Sean, you had your hand up.
Just so I understand, and Ron, I agree with you that if I'm understanding this, this would be a requirement for any resolution that is brought before the council. There'd be a minimum of a 7-day notice period or in advance of the meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I would propose.
Okay. With that understanding, from my point of view, I think this is certainly an issue for the Rules or the Guidelines Committee, and I would propose that certainly be first on its agenda to take a look at, and not change the wording in this particular resolution, which stands alone. So I would look to move ahead with this resolution without adding that language at this time, but certainly the issue of a 7-day window minimum certainly be brought up before the Rules and Guidelines Committee.
So if we follow
Can
that,
you get closer? We can't quite hear you.
if we followed that approach, then I think our expectation would also be that again, right, I'm not picking an approach, but if we did, I would like the expectation to be that in the absence of a rule, that we set the expectation that as much as possible, all of these things are presented to the council, 7 days or more in advance of the meeting, at least until it was codified in a rule.
I don't think your microphone's really on.
Yeah.
Sorry?
You wanted to say that again?
Say that again.
I do. So we have a subject raised. We have a consideration of possibly moving it to an issue with making it part of the rules, what the Rules Committee does, because it would be looking at it as a rule or an attempt to set a standard for all things that come before the council, not just for applications. And I think my comment to that was, if we don't amend it today, I think we should set the expectation that where possible, the documents are delivered to the council at least 7 days before the meeting, even in the absence of a rule, and then the Rules Committee could look at how that language works and how it works with the nuances of when things come up before the council. And that was not me expressing a preference either way. It was just, if we decide to go that way, I think it's still reasonable of us to set that expectation and for the council to hold staff accountable to that. Okay? So, Steve, I saw your hand.
So I agree with Ron, but I also agree with Sean. And my understanding is Sean's also on the Rules Committee, correct?
John is one of the few people that volunteered instead of having me call and tell them.
I heard you say tell him that before the meeting.
Right.
I took this opportunity to throw him under the bus, and if that's okay with Ron, I think, obviously it's up to him, but I think you've outlined the importance to at least get this part done rather than delaying this to do something and then also get the language right. And if necessary, there's always other things we could do to get that in, but I think I think Ron points out something that the council has said probably over and over and over again. So I leave it at that. I leave it up to Ron.
Great. Thank you. I saw another hand over here. Maybe I didn't. Maybe it was a ghost hand. Okay. So, Ron, do you want to propose language?
I can, but I'm comfortable with it being part of the rules as well. I just think it's important that at some point the material get to us a little before. I mean, I've sat here and had things come out literally a half hour before the meeting, and it's just difficult to be prepared and provide meaningful commentary.
So I think we agree. as staff, we would prefer to have all of these things in your hands in advance. So the next meeting is September 5th. Does anybody know what 7 days before that is? Do you know what 7 days before September 5th is? The middle of Labor Day weekend?
Labor Day is the 2nd.
You don't need to go away anyway.
No, but I was planning on sending you all documents on your cabins/family trips/other opportunities.
August 29th.
Is it August 29th? Okay. And August, for this purpose, is August 29th still 90 days out from today? Okay, so I think, let's do this. The staff will take as a task to have all of the documents to the council by the 29th. If there is something that comes up where an application has come in and the 90 days pushes it into 5 days or 4 days, by August 29th, we will notify the council of anything that is still pending and make sure that they are aware of that submission that will be coming. But we will take it as a task that April 29th will be the date that everything for the next council, August, sorry, April is too soon. This takes practice to be this wrong this much during a meeting. So we'll take it as a task that August 29th, the expectation is everything is in your hands in expectation for September 5th. In the meantime, the hope will be that the Rules Committee will take this item up and it will be added to the first call for the Rules Committee and added to a task list that work group is, and I want to make sure I call it the right thing, that work group is tasked with. Is that satisfactory to you, Ron?
Yes, that's fine.
Great. So, seeing no amendment, is that fair, Ron?
Yep.
Okay. Are there any other discussion on the resolution in front of the council? Steve, did you have something else?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? JP, great. So because this is an actual action and not procedural, we will call a roll. As is tradition for this council, we'll call the chair last. The resolution on the floor remains as it is presented to you. A yes vote would be to make this change. A no vote would be to reject this change and to leave these rules as they were, or as they currently are. And obviously, an abstention and a recusal carry the same normal weight that they carry. So, Division of Budget, Jason DiGianni.
Yes.
And Office of State Comptroller?
Yes.
Jim? Empire State Development, Beth? Yes?
Yes.
Division of MWBE?
Yes.
Valerie? Great, thanks. Local Government, Sean Cullinane. Legislative Appointee, Steve Casarda.
Yes.
You. Legislative Appointee, John Evers. Legislative Appointee, Ron Tescarella.
Yes.
Department of Corrections, JP.
Yes.
OPWDD, Lisa.
Yes.
There you are. Thank you. Department of Agency Designee, Ag and Markets, Lisa.
Yes.
Yes. Department of Health, Mary Beth.
Yes.
And Office of Mental Health, Paul. All right, and the chair also votes yes. So I'll just wait for a minute for the staff to tell me that we had enough votes and that it's status. Okay. So we report 14. So 14 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstentions, 0 recusals. So this resolution does pass. So as an added action step, because it specifically affects the applications proposed by the preferred sources, staff will, in addition to making this available, will specifically notify the preferred sources about this change. so that they can incorporate that into their calendars going forward and their planning for the September 5th meeting. Is that acceptable to everyone? Okay. So with that said, I have an agenda somewhere. We move on to open council discussion. Are there any subjects for open council discussion? Going once, going twice. Great. Seeing none. Some housekeeping. GovBuy, OGS's event for procurement training, April 30th, May 1st. It is in the Empire State Plaza and the Albany Capitol Center this year. There are almost 1,300 people already registered, which is a new record for our event. So might as well set the bar as high as possible. If you or your staffs have not registered yet, we would appreciate it greatly. I get to run the meeting, so I get to remind you about GovBuy. That's pretty much how that works. Other than that, I don't believe we have... Sorry? Over 200. So there are over 200 contractors participating this year and vendors participating this year. Couple quick housekeeping things. In the same vein that the council expects us to be prompt, and we continue to try to get to that point of getting documents out to you on time, it would be great if we could get a little bit more consistency on responses for quorum. We do the quorum calls early. We know that people's schedules change, but the reason we do those early is because all scheduled meetings have an alternate date, and there is a point where if we don't have quorum, we will move towards the looking at the alternate date. So if when you get those requests, you could respond to them, even if you're not sure, let us know that you got them. Let us know when you will know whether you're able to participate for quorum. That would be great. And that is also why we publish the list, at the beginning of the year. So we very much appreciate that if everybody could bear with us and give us that consideration. And then also, if anybody does want to see the progress of the work group on the guidelines, wants to see any of the documents, any of those sorts of things, I know I've promised Valerie a conversation from her perspective, but we are available for all of that. And then because the meeting because the general consensus was meeting over the summer was more of a challenge for folks, the legislative session is over, it's just harder to get everybody together. We did put a number of months between now and the next meeting in September. Before that, we will do a call out to all council members. If anybody wants to get on the phone with me, get caught up about anything that'll be on the agenda. If you're not interested in that, that's fine, but a call will go out from my office in August to make that available to everybody. So that's just some housekeeping items. Other than that, seeing no other items, and did I forget anything? That's why John came around earlier. I had forgotten to embarrass John. So seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mary Beth, motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Valerie, great, thank you. Otherwise, for a second, I thought we were going to sit here all day. Motion to adjourn is on the table. Could everybody in favor please signify by putting your hand up? All right, I see all the hands, but just in case, are there any noes to that motion? Are there any abstentions or recusals from the motion to adjourn? Okay, seeing none, we very much appreciate the time everybody spent today, and please again thank your staff or yourselves for the time you're spending on the Procurement Guidelines Work Group with us, and we will see everybody in September and communicate with you at least 7 days before that. Ron. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Great.
This lines up nicely with peak allergy season.